Ben, did you just have a libertarian run-in?
I did. On Wednesday, I went into Manhattan to talk to Dave Smith at the Part of the Problem show. He's a comedian and a libertarian podcaster.
I never heard of him.
Yeah, well, that's...
But he kind of does. He kind of does something like sort of like this, maybe. He's kind of does some commentary, comedy or something.
Yeah. So he does something that's like this. It's on YouTube and it's a podcast. I don't know as much about his comedy career, but I think that he was brought in to be like the sidekick for Luis Gomez and Legion of Shanks or whatever that's called.
Okay. I think I know Legion of Skanks. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with it. So anyway, so you were there. You had a nice exchange of ideas with him. I'm not going to lie to you. I did not watch all of it, but seemed like the point is you're willing to get out there and make your points, Ben. Give them an argument. No. You were last seen at some small studio. I'm guessing, if I had to guess, somewhere in Midtown, giving them an argument.
I was, and whatever. I think that I could some other occasion give my impressions of that debate, but give them credit for having it. Unlike folks like Stefan Molyneux, or
I don't know who that is either.
Yeah.
No, actually, I do know who that guy is, and yeesh. The fact that you're willing to debate him really speaks to your incredible fortitude. But let's deal with, we're going on an opposite track for today's debunk. We're actually dealing with the Democratic leadership that is harming our country and holding us back and engaging in logical fallacies. And I'm going to read you a quote from Nancy Pelosi. I don't know when this, I'm assuming this is a couple of months ago. We don't have the date in front of it. But this is a recent quote.
Yeah, that's right.
This is a quote. It's part of an article from The Hill. And they're speaking of Pelosi. But she noted signature achievement, the ACA. She touted her signature achievement, the ACA, and said she did not want to dismantle it, which moving to the single-payer system would do. Pelosi, now I'm quoting Pelosi, all I want is the goal of every American having access, there's that word, having access to health care, Pelosi said. You don't get there by dismantling the Affordable Care Act. Ben, why is this not an exemplar of logic?
Yeah, so I also want to highlight the title of the article, which is Pelosi on single payer. How are we going to pay for that? Which is actually not as bad as the main argument we're going to focus on, but also pretty weird, because I think that assuming that Nancy Pelosi isn't an idiot, and I think that given her position and her record, I think she's definitely not an idiot.
No, we can all agree that Nancy Pelosi is very much not an idiot. She's actually quite savvy. That's not the point.
Right.
Yeah.
So given that she's quite savvy, she absolutely knows the answer to her rhetorical question, how we're going to pay for it. She knows that even if we had a fairly regressive tax to pay for it, that would still save most people money, because the tax burden would be to pay for it would be less than the current combined cost of their taxes and their private health insurance premiums. So clearly that's something that she's saying because it gives her an excuse to be against it, not because she really believes that this is a serious problem, where we could dig up the money to pay for single-payer health care. And something similar seems to be true here. And one of the reasons, when I was talking to you a few weeks ago, closer to where this interview came out about possibly doing this on one of the debunks, one of the things we were talking about was that it'd be a nice thing for us to talk about, because I can briefly say what's wrong with it as an argument, but then that just raises this further question of, okay, why is she saying this in the first place? And you might have some thoughts about that. But as far as what's wrong with it, it's pretty straightforward, right? So when you say, access, if all you really mean is, access to health insurance, then my God, what could give easier access to health insurance than just having the government literally give everybody health insurance like they do in civilized countries? So that doesn't really make sense. And when she's saying, well, the goal of access to affordable health care for everybody isn't going to be achieved by dismantling the ACA, and then Medicare-For-All would dismantle the ACA. This is a textbook case of equivocation. That dismantle the ACA means something different in the first premise of the argument there, that we're not going to get to the goal of giving everybody health care by dismantling the ACA, than it means in the second premise, that instituted single payer would dismantle the ACA, because in the first premise, dismantle the ACA means go back to what we had before that. Otherwise, that's the only way to read that, so that sentence makes any sense at all, that we're not going to get, it's the goal of giving everybody health care by dismantling the ACA, that sure, doing what the Republicans want to do and going back to, when you could discriminate against people for pre-existing conditions, et cetera, that's very bad for the goal of getting everybody health care. But of course, if you read the phrase dismantle the ACA in the sense of do what the Republicans want, that the first premise makes sense, but the second premise doesn't make any sense. Because you say moving a single payer would mean dismantling the ACA. Well, no, moving a single payer wouldn't mean dismantling the ACA in the sense of going back to what we had before. It would mean dismantling the ACA in the sense of making it redundant by going beyond it. So, we don't need all these elaborate patchwork of regulations on the private health insurance industry, because we have replaced it with Medicare-For-All. And so if you read dismantle the ACA in any way that makes the second premise make sense, then the first premise doesn't make sense anymore. So, in other words, it sounds like the conclusion follows for the premises syntactically, but that's only if you're just not paying attention to what the key phrase means. The reason that it's not actually a valid argument is that phrase means something different in the first premise than it does in the second premise. So that's what's wrong with it as an argument. But of course, that's pretty transparent, right? I mean, I think even if you don't have the terminology to know what the name of the fallacy of equivocation is, I think that anybody who kind of sits and thinks about that for a second should realize that there's something very wrong with that argument, which raises this further question. So why is she saying this in the first place, right? If as we agree, she's a very smart person, she's a very savvy operator, she knows perfectly well that instituting single payer wouldn't dismantle the ACA in the sense of going back to what we had before. So what's she trying to get at? What is she trying to signal when she says this?
Well, what she's trying to signal is she's trying to muddy the waters significantly. And what she's trying to do is, I think, actually tap into people's loss aversion, which on some level makes sense. Healthcare is terrifying because we live in a absolute hellscape with regards to capitalist healthcare in this country. And she's trying to cue, I think, just a fear response to, all right, maybe, you're still absolutely in a really untenable, abusive situation with regards to healthcare, but we all remember what it was like. As you said, you had a pre-existing condition, or there wasn't this slight expansion of subsidies, let alone the Medicaid expansion, which actually, of course, is some sort of form of single payer-ish, just means tested. So that's, of course, like the best part of the ACA. So she's going to gloss over that. But I mean, I think that's what she's doing, and it's very clear political speak. She might even be cueing into some type of trying to associate her anti-progress position with nostalgia for President Obama, which Hillary Clinton did when she was, lying about the Sanders plan and distorting it. But I think, this to me is a kind of great lesson, and we did talk about this of this is why, yes, I agree with you. The left can't just be, attacking or moralizing. But at the same time, it's correct that we approach a lot of these things with a very healthy degree of cynicism, because we're not getting fed an argument here. We're getting fed for some people, might be actually pretty effective spin.
Yeah, and I think that one reason, I think actually what this highlights is one of the reasons why it's a worthwhile exercise to look at the argument and break it down and see what's wrong with it. Because sometimes, as in this case, it's not that there's anything particularly interesting wrong with the argument. In fact, if anything, it's that what's wrong with the argument is so obvious when you start to think about it that it really exposes that the purpose of her saying this isn't exactly to be taken literally, right? That she's doing something else, that the argument is standing in for this spin, this attempt to associate herself with the legacy of Obama and people's nostalgia for Obama in the age of Trump, to just mention something that people are scared about. And once you sort of see that, oh, no, there's actually no argument here that's worth taking seriously at all, then you can dig into what's really going on there, which can actually be very clarifying, because what it clarifies is that on the face of it, right, when you first hear her say this, maybe not us, because, you know, we are so used to the sort of contours of these debates that, you know, as soon as you said the word access, everybody in the studio started laughing, which is the right reaction, because we all know that access is you know, what people say to signal that they're not really on board with the only real solution here. They want to save the private industry, and so they're going to, you know, muddy the waters. But for people who aren't as savvy about as that, you know, for people who are, you know, like good Democrats who maybe even voted for Bernie in 2016, and really do have a lot of our goals, then when they hear Pelosi say something like that, they might think, oh, hey, there's somebody, if they're not really thinking about it too much, they might think, oh, there's somebody who shares my feeling that things were better under Obama. And they share a lot of my moral and political goals. You know, they're as outraged at how hard it is to get health care as I am, but we're just having an argument about how to get there, right? You know, that's when she's talking about the goal of everybody having access, you know, to affordable health care, you know, that makes it sound like we're just having this argument among people who are basically on the same team about how we're all going to get where we want to go together, which is everybody having health care. But then, like, when you realize that taken as an argument, it's just total nonsense, then that can actually help people realize that we're not on the same team, that, you know, that she's on team neoliberalism. Right.
Absolutely. And team neoliberalism is not everybody gets health care. Okay. Ben, appreciate your time as always, brother. The Debunk with Ben Burgis, go order it. Give them an argument, logic for the left. Incredible book from Zero Books. Ben, thanks a million as always. You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.